What's up, everyone? Welcome back. This is the Durbin Compound. If you haven't met me already, my name is Devin Durbin. So a buddy of mine had requested a guide to reloading for beginners. So, I was thinking about it when he said it. I said, that seems kind of generic and stupid, but when I was getting into reloading, every single person that I had talked to was an older guy at one of the gun stores, and they said, what you should do to get into reloading is get a reloading book, read it from front to back 5 times, and then maybe you'll be ready to reload. And then when I actually got it set up and got it going, I realized how stupid it was and how horrible that advice was, because you don't learn unless you put hands on. And you can watch videos all over the internet. This is not new content. This is simply my spin on it. So there are real basic ways to do it. You can do it with very little investment up front, or you can go all in like I have done. And I'll show you in this video the basic understanding about what reloading is, some of the things that are helpful to have, and then we'll also go through the different kinds of presses that you can have. I have 2 different kinds of presses. But I'll show you a couple examples, and I'll roll in some B-roll to show you some other examples. So first thing I want to go over is the basics. Like, what are we even getting ourselves into? So the thing that I tell everybody is don't overthink it, but stick to the rules. So when I say that, I mean that it's not overly complicated. You do not have to be a rocket scientist to reload some ammo. But you want to stick to the rules and regulations when it comes to actually reloading your ammo. So one thing that you do need to pick up, or if you want to research all of your information on the internet, you can. I bought this reloading book from Lee, and so this is the Modern Reloading Guide from Richard Lee. It does have a full section in the front of how to reload it, what everything is, all that kinds of stuff. But the most important thing with all of this and this huge thick book, and why it's so huge, is because it has the loadout for every single caliber that you would ever want to reload. So calibers are set up in here from smallest to largest. So one thing that you always want to pay attention to is the never exceed block. So every reloading book, regardless of what brand you get, should have a never exceed powder amount. So it's going to usually be measured in grains. Sometimes there's other measurements. I like to go by cc's because I use the Lee Dipper cups. So I'll explain a little bit more about that when we get to it. But as long as you don't go over the never exceeds mark, you don't have anything to worry about, because this shows you exactly how much pressure you're going to have on your case. And then if you don't go over the never exceeds bar, then you're technically reloading safe no matter what you do or how you do it. As long as you're under the never exceed spot, you're not going to hurt yourself. So we'll go over a couple more things when it comes to actually making the bullet and how you want to set it up. But once you get your first bullet made and you know that works for you, then you really don't need to tinker with it. So there are a lot of guys that get into very, very, very in detail reloading specs and changing powders and changing the type of powder and the round, how heavy the round is and what shape it is, all of those things. That video, we're not going to go over that in this video, because that's getting into it. That's kind of that second kind of cool. What I reload for when it comes to pistol calibers is I'm reloading for trigger time. So I'm just making sure that my weapon is functioning the way I need it to every single time. And literally it's all about me getting rounds down range. So if I have a 7-yard target, I do not need to load some crazy home defense round. I'm using home defense ammo, factory ammo for that kind of stuff. I am not going to shoot my reloads at somebody. That's relying on you to, maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you made a squib load. A squib load is when there's no powder in the case and you loaded it, or you loaded it with very little powder in there, and then that bullet does not actually make enough power to exit the barrel, and that's a squib load. So mistakes happen. We are humans. So when you reload like that, and then when you want to, put your life on it, I don't play that game. So I use, critical defense or whatever factory ammo that I believe in at the time. I'll use that for home defense. The rest of the reloads are pure for practice. So I don't get wrapped around the axle on how well does it group and how much should I change the powder and tweak it this and that. You're wasting a lot of time that you could be reloading ammo. If it works and it cycles all of your weapons that you want to use it in, then it is a good recipe and you can use it as long as you want. So let's go over the absolute basics. So what you want to know is, which I was thinking about taking a whiteboard and doing some illustrations with an overhead, mount the camera overhead so you could see some illustrations. But legitimately, you take your spent brass and we run it through a series of 3 dies, and boom, it's done and over with. So you can use it on what's called a single stage. So each of your dies go into the single stage. I will roll a little clip of what a single stage looks like, but it only holds 1 die at a time. So when you come down with it, you're doing 1 step at a time. If you're trying to reload for volume, a single stage is very slow because you have to set up 1 die and then you have to set up another die, and you want to get all of your rounds that you're doing right then and there. You want to get them done with the first die, and then you have them staged somewhere. Then you put in your second die, and you're doing all of the reloading on, or the action on the second die, and then the third die. So regardless of what caliber or what company you go with when it comes to dies, I am a Lee fan. I through and through have been a Lee fan. Hornady sells some, RCBS, Dillon. There's so many different die makers, and people will argue up and down that you need the RCBS because they're better, and they, whatever. It's whatever works for you and whatever you're comfortable with is what you want to go with. Like it, people's opinions get wrapped into it too much. It's like, hey, does the product work? Yes. Lee stands by all their products. They wouldn't put it out there if it wasn't good. Usually most of your die sets come with 3 dies. So the first die is a decapping die. So they call it decapping, but it's a depriming. So you have to get rid of the old primer that's in the base of your shell. Regardless of what size the caliber is, you have to get rid of the primer and insert a new one. So sometimes if you have a smaller press, you might not have a primer inserter piece on your press. So some presses have it where it'll press in a new one on your downstroke. That's how mine does it on my ammo plant. I push forward, it presses a new primer up in there. But in essence, we are just replacing the primer. Then we need to, basically, this is a full-length sizing die. So what this does is it resizes the entire case. So make sure that it's the right width all the way down through there. So you want to inspect your brass, make sure it's in good shape, it's not misshapen or dented. At a certain point, you'll know that, hey, that doesn't look right. Just chuck it. Don't worry about it. Brass is really, really cheap, and if you're shooting a lot, then that round is, if you feel that it's unsafe, pitch it. It's not worth it. You run it through that die, and then you'll go to your next die, which is a powder through die. So what the powder through die does is you'll run the die down in there. You have, sometimes when I started reloading, I had the Lee Dipper. You have a little tray full of powder. You literally jump your little scooper down there, shove it off, just level it out, and boom, you dump it into the round here. So the round is up inside here. You dump it down through. That's a powder through die. Simplest version of how to do this. Dump your powder down in through into the tube. Now, sometimes on rifle calibers, you'll have a little funnel like this. This is RCBS funnel. So as you have your rounds in your tray, you literally just take the funnel, put it over each round, dump it in. Too easy. These go from 22 up to 50 cal. So these are little handy funnels. Do you need to do this? No. You can do it with the powder through die and use a little dipper and put it in. This is huge. This dipper is for 308, or I think this is for actually 762 by 54R, so that's a lot of powder in it. So you dump your powder in. When you bring it back out, all this die is doing is opening the mouth of the casing. So the casing needs to be a little bit wider for you to set your bullet in the top of it. Once your powder is in there, you have a new primer. We're setting our bullet on top. So at that point, your mouth of your case is opened a little bit. You can set your bullet in there, and the next die is going to be for seating the bullet and getting it crimped. So here's where that second kind of that cool guy thing comes into play, because you technically only need 3 dies. This die will do it all. Once you get it adjusted and do per the instructions that are in the booklet, you cannot go wrong. This will seat your bullet to the right length. That's going to take a lot of remeasuring, and you're going to have to you'll take this out quite a ways. You'll seat your bullet. You'll measure it per the spec in the book that I showed before. I maybe roll in a little couple pages and show you where I'm talking about in the book. I'll try to highlight it. So then you seat your round to the specific depth that it needs to be in there. And then you can also set this up to crimp as well. So once it's to where it needs to be, you can set it to crimp your casing around that bullet. Otherwise, if you wanted to add a 4th die to the set, you would get a factory crimp die. So as far as I know, factory crimp dies are only available by certain manufacturers. The factory crimp die is designed to just crimp it to the factory spec. I have a few of them. I really don't use them because it does add another step. If you have a single stage press, you're already three processes deep. You don't need to add the factory crimp die in there as well. So that's literally what you do. You deprime, you straighten the whole wall of the casing, you put powder in it, you open the mouth, you put the bullet in, you seat the bullet to the proper depth that you need. When it comes to overall length, you will have a micrometer on it. You just get a simple micrometer. Okay, so once you seat your bullet in the casing, what you'll do is you'll measure your overall length. So you can go by the book. I have this set for my overall length. My minimum overall length is 2.8 inches. So then I'll come in with my micrometer and I will set my bullet tip on there and hold it hold it just like this, and make sure that I'm at 2.8 or greater. That's my minimum overall length based on case pressure. It's all in the book. So once I figure out my recipe, I will know exactly how much powder I'm putting in. I will seat the bullet, and then you just need to check it every now and then to make sure that you're at the same overall length. Now, this also comes into play when you're talking about head spacing. So those of you who have never even heard of head spacing, what head spacing is, when you chamber this into the rifle, if this bullet is out too far, it will engage in the barrel too much. So when you push it into the barrel, it does not want to come out. It will be wedged in there, and that headspace is bad. You want it to stick in there a little bit, but not, you want it to be in there, but not super tight. So you need to play around with the head spacing. This is prevalent on any firearm that you're doing. Regardless of what anybody says, based on my experience, you need to check your headspace. I have had, in the past, I have not been able to figure out the 357 SIG. When I reload 357 SIG, it's a necked casing for pistol, and one of my pistols will not agree with the headspace that I can load. So I have been unable to load 357 SIG for one of my pistols. I'm pretty sure it's a Springfield XD that will not chamber the round that I make. If I put it into a Glock, it'll fire that 357 SIG all day long. Now, why there's a difference, I'm not sure. Tolerances in the barrel, all of that stuff come into play, but it will not fire through my Springfield XD. So to avoid all the confusion, I do not load it, because that pistol, one day I could put that into the pistol, possibly, and then I'm running into problems. So I just don't load it. Forget it. I cannot figure out how the heck to get it to fit. So when it comes to rifle cases and stuff like that, you go by the book and it's generally pretty darn close and you don't have to worry about it. So once you have your recipe found out, you know exactly how much powder you're doing and then your correct overall length, that is all you need to worry about. You've got your bullet weight, which is in the book. I'll highlight that right now. It'll show you in the book. It'll show you exactly what you're loading with. I load with a 168 grain jacketed bullet. I highlight, what powder I'm using, whether it be H. Varget or IMR 4064, and then it shows, some of this stuff some of the data isn't in the book all the time, and you need to research it online. Then once you fire a test round, you put one through the barrel, fire a test round. Hey, does it work? Does it look good? Did you flare out the case to the point where it got stuck in the barrel? That's things you want to look for. So I've been reloading the same recipe for 308 and it is pretty darn accurate when I'm zeroing and all that stuff. It looks like on this round that I did a factory crimp die. And for whatever reason I reloaded with a factory crimp die that time. Don't know why I did, but I did. And that's all she wrote. So that is literally reloading in a nutshell. You have 3 dies, you have powder, you just need to know the specs by getting a book or researching it online. Do you need to buy a huge book? No, this has hundreds of calibers that I don't use, like 6.3 by 62 millimeter Mauser, like 40 Smith & Wesson, 10 millimeter, my favorite. 40-65 Winchester. This has literally every bullet you could imagine. It has it in this book. Some of your Wildcats aren't going to be in here, but for the most part, you have a book and you have all the data you need to reload and be safe about it. Just remember, never go over that never exceed. That never exceed comes from the volume of powder that you're putting into your case. That's all you need to worry about. So, cleaning your brass, whether you tumble it, I clean my brass with a water solution. You need to rinse it very, very well. I clean it with water and vinegar and salt, and I think also Dawn soap is in there. So, it's very corrosive and it will tarnish your brass very fast. So you put it through the ultrasonic for a full 480 seconds, and boom, it's right in the sink getting washed off and dried with a hairdryer. But it comes out squeaky clean. That's how I clean my brass. There's so many different ways of doing it. There's so many things that you can do. That'll be down the road in different videos. I'm purely explaining the basics of reloading. So that's about it for this video. I will roll in. Let's set up the press right now, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to what it looks like when you're putting the dies together. I'm kind of going to rock it like a single stage and show you like that. Alright, so now I've got my press out in front of me. This is a Lee progressive press. It's a semi-progressive press. So this at one time spun around. But now I use it as a single stage press. So what I mean by that is if you had a single stage, only one die would fit in the top of your press. And I'll roll in a picture to show you what I'm talking about. So you have your ram that brings the rod up. Okay, for instructional purposes only, this is what I'm going to do right now. I am going to reload a round of 308 and show you exactly how it's done using the 3 dies. So I do not have a powder through die for 308 because I load them off of the table. So literally you have your little, of course I drop it right now, why wouldn't I? Okay, you have your little case holder. This case holder goes in the bottom of your ram, literally just slides in, and it will hold whatever casing you have that you want to load. So obviously it hooks onto the bottom of your casing and holds it into place. So this will snap onto your ram, and as you can see it go up and down. Okay, so the first step, remember the first step was depriming and straightening the wall of your casing. So on most rifle calibers, you need to use some case lube in order for the press to work. You need to either need to oil or grease your dies with a graphite lube, or you need to spray case lube. And I spray case lube because it really doesn't affect the powder or anything like that. and it's easy to clean up and just wipe off. So let's go ahead and run it down through here, and we deprime. So deprime, literally the primer just falls out. It fell onto the floor, but you can literally catch it in your hand. And then you've taken the primer out of the bottom of the case. Now, in the instance here, this press is set up with these little hinged primer things. I don't know what they're called, but they go in the bottom. They go in the middle of your ram, and then when you come down, it will kick into place, and then this seats your primer back up into the case. So we hook it in here. Primers come in a little tray like this, about 100 primers in a case, and they have all the primers sitting in this plastic tray. Now usually what I'll do is I'll get a bin and take this out, turn it upside down, and flip them all out onto a thing, into a tray or something like that. But if you're just trying to get one out at a time, you need to cover it with your finger and then plop the one over. All you need to make sure of is that you orient this correctly with the bang side up and the smooth side at the bottom, and you literally just push it up into the case. Now you don't need to go crazy with it, but you want to make sure that it's flat when you seat the primer. Too easy. It's done. I have deprimed and primed my case. Now I can get rid of this for instructional purposes. So now what I'll do is I'll slide around to the next die. So the next die, if you remember correctly, is usually my powder through die or my seating die. So in this case, it's my seating die. What I'm going to do now is put powder in my bullet, or put powder in my casing, and then I'm going to put a bullet in the mouth of the case. So usually, what I just remembered is you can tell if the primer's out too far if you put the round down and it wobbles around on the primer. You'll really know when it wobbles around because it really won't stand up. There's a difference between wobbling around on the base of the case and then the primer. So just heads up there. So let's go. So I have my Lee dipper. This is a reason why I use these dippers, is because it's so stupid easy. You don't need to weigh out the little thing. You don't need to count on a little powder measure. Like, they make all kinds of little powder measures that are automatic, and once you set them, you forget them. But they're so inconsistent, it is ridiculous. So what I do is I literally just take my jug of powder, and I will dump this out into a small tray as I'm working with it. Take my seal off, and then I literally just take a scoop full of powder, and what I'll do is make sure that it is, hold on here, I'm trying to do this, watching myself here, make sure that it is topped off the top, and make sure it's leveled off, put my funnel down over my round, and then literally dump it in. Boom, just like that. Tap it a little bit, make sure it's all down in there. Boom, I have powder in my case. So at this point, you should be able to see the powder down in there, but it shouldn't be all the way to the top. Some of them you'll overfill, some of them you won't. You want to make sure that this is the correct dipper. In my book, it has Lee Dipper 2.8. So this is a 2.8 cc dipper. That's why I have a Lee book. That's why I do these Lee dippers. It's not rocket science. So if I am doing 100 or 300 of these at a time, I literally have them all set up in their little trays. For instructional purposes only, I'm working with one, so it's really easy. Literally dip into my thing or dip into a pile of it I have in a little bin, dip it in, level it off, dump it in the funnel. Next round, dump it in the funnel, dump it in the funnel. Now I have gone around and loaded every single one. Now I'm ready to put a bullet in it. So I put it back in my press, got it lined up on the bullet seat die and crimp die. I have this one backed off so it will not crimp, and we're about to set the bullet. All right, so great. I do not have any 308 bullets in order to load. I'm out of them. So of course, while I'm trying to do an instructional video, I don't have any bullets. Let's imagine that I put a little bullet on here, and then I run this up into my bullet seat die, and it seats it to the proper length. Before I crimp, I want to come over and measure my overall length. So imagine I just put the bullet into the round, and then I come over, measure my overall length, make sure it is within my spec. Okay, 2.8 inches. Okay, that is my minimum overall length. So 2.8 inches or more. I load to 2.8 inches because that is what chambers the best in my weapons. Boom, 2.8, done. Okay, now I know that this is good to go for the next phase, which is a factory crimp die. So I just literally spin it around to the factory crimp die. So then I run it up and I crimp my round. And that's it. Done. Crimped round, chuck it in the bucket. It is done, complete. Now you want to make sure that this fires and it does what you want it to do. If you want to tweak your powder later and do something like that, make sure that it is safe and that it fires well in your weapon. Make sure to not go over the exceeds mark. I'm at 2.8 cc's, and that is 42 start grains. So 42 grains, my never exceed is 46 grains. So with this, I'm 4 grains under powder, or 0.4, right? No, I'm 4 grains under total. I'm 4 grains under powder with using this Lee Dipper, and this shoots well, shoots great with what I want to do. It says for my IMR 4064, the start grain is 41.5, max is 45.9. So if I load with 42, I'm right at the low end of where I want to load this. So I'm completely safe. I'm doing it nice and easy. You do not have to have a lot of money to start up reloading. Literally, the funnel makes it convenient. The Lee Dippers make it really convenient. They come in a box. They come in a box like this if you choose to do it the way that I do it. I don't like to use a automatic powder feed, so what I'll do is I get this this Lee Dipper kit. I think it's like $10. So it comes with every single Lee Dipper that you would need to do exactly what I'm doing. So 2.5 came out of the 2.5 block. Too easy, just like that. I pulled that out and I used that. Now I have some others, like these come in actual tins that the Lee dies come in, so you're already getting them. This one's a 3.1. I have 2 3.1s now. This is for 7.62 by 54R. So boom, you already have the Lee Dipper. You literally just dip it in the powder and put it in. You cannot go wrong. These are by the book. The book tells you what dipper to start with. If you want to up it a little bit, maybe a little heaping, scoop. But that's the easiest, simplest way to do it, and precision load every single time. All of my rounds are exactly the same if I'm using the same dipper and skimming it the same way every single time. Dumping it in, and you cannot mess it up. If you had a powder measure that was automatic, and let's say it loaded 1 heavy, 1 light, you can see that in reloading a lot is boom, 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 and the pistol is like, wow, you loaded a hot load. Well, most of the time it's because of that powder measure being inaccurate between every load. So this is the simplest way to do it. Get yourself a single stage press. A single stage press means that you would have to screw out these dies at every single station. So if you got a Hornady lock and load system, they come out and they do a half turn or a quarter turn. This Lee system threads in, so once you have it set, you can set it and forget it. You basically just thread it in, and then your single stage, you would thread the next die in that you're ready for, go through your 100 to 300 rounds, and then put your next die in and get that set up. Once you have that set up, boom, run all your rounds through it, and then take it out and get the other one set up. It's that easy. And then when you're done, put your powder back together and close her on up, and boom, you've made your round successfully. It is not rocket science. There's 3 basic dies, 4 if you want to use a factory crimp die. It's literally following the instructions, making sure that you're under the never exceed line and you're staying with the overall length, making sure it will chamber into your weapon, and then test firing it to make sure it's safe. If you're not going above and beyond the parameters in the book, you will never hurt your weapon. It's not going to happen. So that is my take on a basic reloading. You do not have to have a lot of money to set up. I will put a link to this Lee turret press in the description. This is a semi-progressive. It used to have a post on it, so every time you come down with it, it would go to the next die. So every time you go, next die, and you could do your rounds one after another. I chose to take that out and use it as a single stage. Single stages are even cheaper. So you can get into reloading with $100 in tools. By what I'm saying is dies and a press, and then maybe a funnel, maybe the lead dippers. You can do it for $100, plus your supplies, your powder, your primers, and your bullets. So you can go to work and make it happen. I started on my dining room table with this very press and this board here that I clamped to the bench. I started on my dining room table, and since then I've been upgrading and getting geeky with it. But that is seriously the basics. You can do it for $100. It's totally possible. I'll put a link in the description to a kit that I would recommend, which is going to be the Hornady Lock and Load kit. And I'm pretty sure you can make it happen with $100, even with a nice Hornady loader. I'll put in some cheaper options for you. Link in the description below if you want to see more. So that's my video. I hope you like it. Next video I'll go over is the different kind of presses and what they're like. And we'll go over the details of what it is to have a semi-progressive, a small turret press like this. We'll go over to the ammo plant where it has a turntable instead of the turret. So there are so many different options out there. Pick the one that works for you. If you're doing a very small amount, you only need a single stage press, plain and simple. If you're doing more than 200-300 rounds at a time, you might want to step up to something like the lead turret press. If you're doing thousands and thousands of rounds, then you step up to something like a fully progressive press. But they are a bear to load on because there's so many moving parts. There's so much stuff going on. So I hope you like my video. Subscribe. Love to see you around. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.